Welcome back. We've done it. We've got to the end of Neon Genesis Evangelion. We have completed episodes 25 and 26. And now for the big question that everyone asks about these episodes, Freddie. Did they ruin it for you?
No.
Excellent. How do you feel of them as a conclusion? Maybe also, when you answer this, take into the context of what era it was produced and potentially what it allowed future anime to do. How did you feel about the last two episodes being a psychological evaluation quiz? And maybe it was just a dream.
There are many conflicting feelings I have at the same time.
To the human experience.
I'm aware. I have been trying to avoid living it for the last many years. So I'm probably going to use a lot of metaphors this episode, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So
I use a lot of quotes and adages, so I'm sure if anyone's been watching us, that they're down with that.
To oversimplify it a little bit, these two episodes and reminds me very much of the picture of the horse drawing.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in the last episodes are bad.
Is this where they finish the picture of the horse, just for reference?
Yes,
where it's
yes.
Like artistically amazing on one side, and then like your 5-year-old's done the legs at the back end. Okay.
Yes, yes. And I don't mean that the episodes are bad. It's been a very rough sketch, and they've had no time to do extra, whilst also simultaneously missing a bunch out. Imagine if you did like a 100-meter sprint race, and you're doing really well. It's really like competitive. You're putting all your effort in. You cross the finish line first. You're really happy. You turn around and everyone's just there, stood there clapping, and they've just stopped in mid-race. It's like, oh, what?
I was expecting you to say that you're running and you go in and you're blitzing it, and you turn around and realise you've run the 100 meters the other way to what everyone else has ran.
No, it suddenly feels like you've crossed the finish line and you realize everyone let you win out of pity. But it feels like you got like 95% of the way there, believing that it's a genuine thing, that you're winning because of the work you've put in. And then it's like, yeah, you've got to like the last 5 meters and everyone just suddenly stopped still to let you win because of like
a hollow victory.
Yeah, it suddenly makes you kind of go, oh, I don't know how this makes me feel inside. And that's that kind of feeling that you suddenly turn on and it's like, oh, hang on, did you do this because you're pitying me? And it sort of taints the whole race, like the whole race you've just run. There's a bunch of other things I feel, but that's, yeah.
Okay, because like I remember watching these as a teenager and I was very confused as to why we went from like kick-ass, amazing mecha ninja in a tunnel fight, Karu being Jesus. That was fine. I could understand that. And then I was like, why are we suddenly in a psychological view of everyone? So
it feels like this should be episode 29 and 30.
Yeah. And I felt confused. It's like, why are they interrogating themselves via the perspective of others? I know we get the explanation in is it 26? The reason that the Human Instrumentality Project, easy for you to say, exists is to combine the human souls, or as Retsuko would put it, the meaning of the human heart. To Seela's opinion is every human being experiences loneliness. And to fix that, if you put all the souls together into a gestalt, a whole entity, in Evil 1, because they need an actualized Eva with an S2 drive from an angel to rapture everyone in together, which in this blended notion of everyone is each other, everyone is questioning each other and their means and motives. And it seems part of the setup, especially for Asuka and Masato, is it's like they're auditioning for a school play because they're sat on a chair in like a school hall. Shinji is different. He's on top of the world. Whenever people speak to him, they're on top of planets. And this is we had a little preamble about the very, very end of episode 26 where Shinji's late for school and he's got the Pem bobblehead and he's got the hot teacher that's Masato and his mum and dad are alive and his friend Auska comes to wake him up, and the hot transfer girl, Ray, is coming to school. And Freddie called it Shinji World. Like, this is a dream. It's Shinji's ideal world. But
yeah, a world he's created
yeah.
that he desires.
But when we have him in the questioning booth of human instrumentality, he's on
HIP
top of the
from now on.
world. Yeah. HIP. When he's in HIP, he's on a chair on top of the world. And everyone else is on their own worlds, because as we've experienced Evangelion as a series, Shinji's shown that he perpetually feels isolated and alone. But throughout the show, he's realised he can make connections and have boundaries, so he can be his own world, you can be your own world, and we can interact, we can build bridges, permanent or temporary. Most of life's bridges is a transitional, like, we work together. But if I change job, would we still talk and be friends? I like to think so. But a lot of times those kind of relationships break down because you don't see that person, and there is the phrase out of sight, out of mind. Maybe as a storytelling method, there's a lot to take in, and I know throughout this series has never made it about hand holding. I have my opinion, you have your opinion, and we can discuss that. There'll be people who will turn to us and go, there is a world, there is a law, and they are official. People who tell stories are trying to show an experience they have and have been through, to create a frame for you as a viewer to look into their world and to interpret. I don't know if we said this in the podcast, but I know I've said this in person to Freddie. The notion of phenomenology, which is your experience and interactions with the world as you experience and interact with the world, which was given to me in this mental picture from my RE teacher, Mr. Grant, many years ago. Imagine the whole world is a flat plane, and we're all stood in a big circle, shoulder to shoulder, and in the middle, there is a cow. We may be shoulder to shoulder, and we may see very similar parts of the cow, but we will focus on different things. I might say we're looking at the butt of the cow, the easiest.
Horsey.
Yeah, I know, right? I may focus on the top of the tip of the tail, and you may look at the top of the flank or the top of the leg, because you may have that 1 degree variance of opinion. And someone on the other side of the cow will see the head. We all see a cow, but our experience and interaction varies. And that's the whole purpose of this show. Shinji is our surrogate. And I think one scene I want to ask you about is, tell me how you feel and what you think of the infamous congratulations scene.
Bit of a tricky one, that. That just felt like Shinji's, kind of come to realize that, I think basically what some of the things Misato was saying much earlier in the show, he's actually finally accepted them, in that, he can make choices. He's allowed to make choices, and he's fine for making them for whatever reason he so chooses. The whole thing felt like a really weird fever dream.
Yeah.
And it felt like he's come to the idea of you could be happy with who you are.
Yes.
And again, if you look at the anime from a somewhat meta perspective of, it's an analysis of people who might not be neurotypical or might have some varying form of neurodivergence. It's saying that, you can be that and still be fine the way you are. You don't have to conform to everyone's society's view.
You don't have to be everyone's expectation.
There's a part that reinforces this, in that, no, it's gone. It's gone.
Oh, well. For me, I agree with you. I think a lot of the congratulations scene, I can use words, I'm a real boy, is him being able to step away from what we saw in the early episodes when he was talking to Toji and cameraman of like, oh, you don't see Masato, like you don't see true self of her. It's like he's come to realize that he doesn't show true self to everyone, that there's some of him that he just keeps for him. And people are allowed that. It's okay. Everyone is allowed to have their experience and existence and be respected for that. We don't have to agree. Doesn't mean if I don't agree with you and you are like, let's go kicking kittens every day, I might go, I don't want to hang around with you, and this is my boundary, which Shinji has in those images because he's on his own planet, and you're on your own planet. You're allowed to exist and explore and be that, and occasionally you can come and visit mine, or I can visit yours. And I think maybe a conversation to have this week is about the choice of images, because I know you've been very observant of when Shinji's been on the train with the Miss Masato, Gendo lines and squiggles, and some of the, because there's a lot of word and text. There's one of the images that sticks in my head is the cutout of Shinji against a red background, and everyone flashes through him.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, this is how I see Miss Masato and Rei, and this is how I see my dad, but this is how I see my dad in relation to Rei and Miss Masato, and these are the feelings that I want. And the big overarching feeling or conversation, not feeling for me, is the conversation of every human heart feels loneliness, and to fix this you must engage with another so that you and another can lower the depth of that. I believe last episode we talked about the duality of man, and you talked about there's always a third option. And I think,
in my belief,
yeah,
yes,
and I can get behind that, because I said, we talk about the duality of man, but then when we talk about gods, we talk in threes, like Father, Son, Holy Spirit in like Christian-based religions or Abrahamic religions.
Abrahamic religion.
Yeah, thank you. And we talk about that blend, and we have like the yin and yang from Eastern belief.
Yeah, which again is a duality.
But it's got a circle to hold the two sides in. Otherwise, it's just light and dark. But you need a vessel to hold it, allow it to be itself and blend. That's how I see these two episodes, especially when you contextualize this as Mr. Anno going through mental health problems of himself, learning about these kind of theories and process. And what better group of people to experience this than teenagers who feel it probably in extremes due to hormones. There's definitely some, how would I say, sexual romantic hormones thrown up in this. We get Shinji's impulse to kiss Asuka. Asuka trying to subtly show Shinji she's interested, just not so subtly like, let's just kiss, like trying to test each other's physical boundaries as well. And this, we get a good duality thing again, where Asuka admits that she is Shinji in her part.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
Because doesn't Rei say you're both just the same?
Yes, again, personal beliefs would mean that the wording fits, but I don't think the meaning quite is right. Again, interpretations of the show differ. So my interpretation doesn't quite fit that.
So tell me more of your interpretation. Why does this not fit for you, but it fits? Well, you don't have to tell why it fits for me. That's my job. But you can tell me why it's not working for you.
Well, there's the idea that as you go through life, and it is like represented as like a line on a graph that can go up, it can go down, It can, I wouldn't say loop back on itself, but it certainly can traverse as like a
Would you
two-dimensional
say
graph.
that life is a roller coaster, Freddie?
I might do in certain situations. So if you were to compare two people's graphs and you were to say you're at the same coordinates, that doesn't mean you're coming from the same coordinates. It doesn't mean your graphs are the same. For example, Shinji could be going upwards, could be on an increase. Asuka might be on a decrease. But if they're at the same coordinates, you would say they are at the same point in life. This is true. However, they are not experiencing it through the same lens.
Yes.
Again, so for example, we work at the same job. Doesn't mean you do the exact same things as I do.
Correct,
it's not like
we
and it
both
also
have
doesn't
slightly
mean that
different training to each other. Yeah.
I think different people hold different levels of respect for us in different areas.
Yes.
Even though technically we're the same thing.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
With Ray saying that Shinji and Asuka are the same. They're the same person. Like, yes, they might be in the same position, but that doesn't make them the same person. The reason they are there, again, might be similar, but is different.
Yes. I can totally see that, and I really agree with the point you're presenting. I always think of the same thing in a different language to hammer home the concept that you can have the same view in a different angle. Like, you meet people in life as you are on a journey, and sometimes those people will walk for you 100 yards and you split paths. Some people you walk that path for a few miles. Some people you just always walk that path with, such is the way of the worlds and the choices those people make. And so I totally agree with you. Like, I could have come from the jungle, you could have just come from a flat plain, and it's like, oh, we're at the signpost now. We've obviously had the same experience because we're at the signpost, which I don't believe at all in the slightest.
Yeah, and so I think that plays in a little bit like maybe not the idea you're going with, but the idea that, so in the episodes, I've had a bit of dissonance with them.
Okay.
In that, again, it seems that the show is pushing a duality idea. I believe in like a trilogy of things, and it's because I'm coming at it from a different perspective. It creates this dissonance that pushes me out of it, and I definitely felt at the end of these two episodes that I was almost acutely aware of I am watching somebody's storytelling and not one of the things I really enjoy doing in a lot of stories. I very much enjoy sort of putting myself in the story. I enjoy immersing myself in it, and this really kind of kicked me out of it. And not to say I dislike the story, and I didn't dislike what the episodes do. I feel like they needed a bit more work, but I didn't dislike them inherently.
Yeah.
It just suddenly made it feel like I was a third party observing something rather than being able to engross myself in it.
It's really interesting you say that, because I had that feeling, and I liked that. I liked the mental concept that while this is occurring, in my head, I could walk around this room, and all I had to do was listen and absorb the context that's being provided. And for me, I found that really interesting, and it's a really strange energy that I can't think of many shows giving me. I can think of some films where they try to do like an interrogation scene, and they use a lot of camera work to make you have that like, oh, we're moving around the room together. But in this, it was the audio, the sounds, and the conversation. I've not watched the original ADV version for a long time. I listened to some recently, and I forgot how like a little bit kooky Mr. Kaji's voice is. But for these two episodes, and I really liked that space. That
I think this is actually going to reinforce the point we were making earlier, because I have had a similar experience in the past, but it was from a negative perspective.
Okay.
I've mentioned this to you outside of the episode, outside of the preamble, where the last time I think I felt this was when I was reading a manga, and it was a serialized manga. And then, as far as I was aware, I think the author was told, we are stopping the serialization of this work.
Yeah.
You have one, maybe two slots left to tie everything up. And it was right in the middle of its storytelling. And all of a sudden, all of these loose ends had to be tied up super quickly, and they weren't done necessarily with, and it didn't feel like it was the natural conclusion. And so I've had this somewhat negative experience of being forcefully pushed into a third person perspective in a show. And so then having it happen again, I suppose my brain naturally goes into this, I'm not sure I'm going to like this, I don't like what happened. And as far as I'm aware, from a meta perspective of the anime, it's a very similar thing. They were, from what I'm aware, told, you're running out of money, you need to tie it up, do it now. As quickly as you can. And the same things kind of happened. I've been forcefully ejected from my immersion. Again, I didn't
sounds like my
the episode.
15-year-old experience, like child Gareth many moons ago. I'm watching it this time. I pieced a lot more things together than I thought I would, or so. Like occasionally at the end of episodes, I have a little nosy through like a wiki page or a fan site just for like some little details or little things, and a lot of the time I'm quite happy with my perspective. I'm happy to also to take some of those ideas and go like, oh, I didn't see that, and look at it again and weave it in or out and work with that. I want to quickly talk about the finger pyramids, people. Finger pyramids. I want to talk about the notion that Evangelion that you have viewed so far is just a dream. That was a big sigh.
Well, it was. My initial reaction to that was, I don't recall thinking of it as just a dream, in the sense that I think it was episode 16, 17, when Shinji's trapped in the tank and he's running out of money. He's in the entry plug. And my idea of, is the following thing just his mind racing as he's dying?
Yes, I remember this conversation.
Yeah, and it's like, again, it feels quite plausible. It feels like his brain has... So the previous... so everything before the last two episodes has been his brain sort of in that dream state, because he was asleep in order to preserve oxygen. And so he's been dreaming up a fairly realistic scenario.
And then it's flashing before your eyes kind of thing.
Yeah. And then the last two episodes feel like his brain has run out of oxygen. And it's all of a sudden like, not so much that he's seeing a light, but it's forgiving himself of all of the things that he sees wrong with him, which I guess is happening, but he's letting go of attachments. And it feels like it fits.
I was playing with a few ideas and concepts, like, is it a dream? Which was a very common 90s trope to throw in there. Or has every episode basically been a Shinji therapy session, as shown from the perspective of being a teenage boy trying to add action to his life? If anyone's watches this and it's in Adventure Time, I'm thinking along the lines of Farmland Finn, whose life is so boring, he creates one of the theories before the show ended, and it was deemed otherwise, is that Farmland Finn's dreams are all the episodes of Adventure Time to make his life interesting.
A similar idea with the idea of Harry Potter, that the entire story happens with his little toy figurines under the staircase.
Yeah, because of the trauma. One of the things that, this is a fan positive thing that we mentioned before the episode, is inside the HIP, all souls are merged together to try and reduce the concept of the loneliness in the human heart, and
part of the Trinity.
The spirit of Yui and Gendo, their last wish as good parents is to provide a world for their son to go out into, which is kind of every parent's job to try.
I didn't
and
get that
most
feeling.
Parents do their best, but also fuck it up. in
Yeah.
some degree. It's not intentional. As a parent, if you're watching this, my child, I'm doing my best. And
Mm.
sometimes it's not good enough. I
Yeah.
know this.
Life throws curveballs
Yeah,
at you.
we're all just trying.
Well, yeah, because every parent is also a child in their own
Yes.
right.
There
So,
was a piece of art by, I will put her name here when I do the edit. She's called Laura something on Instagram, and she does very cutesy art. And she did recently a picture of a bear in her hat, and it's like, I'm a baby. This is my first time as a child. This is my first time living. Please be kind to me. As a teenager, I'm still trying. Life is new to me. As an adult, this is still my first attempt. Please be gentle with me. And it's an experience that a lot of people forget about. It's known as the beginner experience. If you accept you're a beginner and the other person's a beginner, you will be kinder. Because I am prone to mistake as you are. And that's one of Shinji's problems earlier on. And maybe a problem that you had with the episodes, Freddie, because expectation has been generated. You have watched the show, seen what the majority of the things are, and episode 24 didn't make you think this is going to become a psychological evaluation. It just didn't. And they flipped the script
yeah.
on you. And people will either go like, I'm ready to go over this and roll with the punches, and other people like, excuse me, sir, I was told I was getting chocolate pudding here, and this is a dead duck.
Yeah. I think part of it as well is how jarringly sudden it is. In that, if it was like episode 29 and 30, and they had time to establish, because it's basically you're left to interpret that the HIP has happened because you're in it.
Yeah.
And it's like we're trying to figure out what it is as it's happening. Which, yeah, again, as you were saying
I
before, the
imagine if
beginner
that
experience.
was happening in the world, that's how
Yeah,
people would
that makes
experience.
sense. Yeah, that is how it would it would be experienced. It's like you're just going about your day-to-day life, and then
Welcome
bam,
to the soup, baby.
Yeah, but I think as a viewer, we should have a little bit of exterior knowledge of what's happening.
A thought has occurred as you made this comment.
Mm-hmm.
So these two episodes internalized viewpoints from the characters. Yes. As a viewer, do you think it would help if there had been an externalized view of people getting raptured? Or, as one person described this online, as the tangified event that everyone was turned into tang. Soup for me and you.
Yeah, I think just having an explanation as to what was happening,
how we got there.
Yeah, and yeah, I as we said before, I can understand the idea that it's happened, it's occurred, and this is the experience that would have happened with it. But again, with it also happening at the start of an episode, it's just, yeah, it's as I said, it kicks me out of the immersion. It's a bit of a strange thing because, again, if the idea of that you're being forced to experience it through the perspective of a character living in that world,
okay,
we had an episode that was entirely dedicated to the past of like Gendo, how he met Yui, how Nerve, the core of Nerve was formed, and you go, if you're experiencing life through Shinji's eyes, you wouldn't have a flashback. You wouldn't just suddenly be like, oh, cool, I know how my dad met my mum. I knew all of these things. It's like, no, you wouldn't have had that, which then makes that kind of episode feel, why have you done that? And not just been like, just had like a scene where you go like, even if you had Gendo at his desk with minimal background, just saying activate the HIP, just to be like, cool, we know what's happening. And it would have been 5-10 seconds. So in some parts of the anime, they've gone, here's information for the viewer as an external entity. And then this part, it's like, you will not be given that. Just feels a little bit inconsistent.
I think this is an intriguing way of doing a narrative throughout the whole series, not just these two episodes. These two episodes, I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but the whole
You had
point thing
several
that
prepared.
so the thing I've enjoyed about these episodes is they don't necessarily handhold you. Yes, there's some clunky exposition, but there is a lot of open space for interpretation. My question before we start wrapping up: how do you feel that the general consensus on these last two episodes, did you find it true? Because the common consensus is they're a hot mess, is what people have said for years. In modern day context, how do you, Freddie, feel about the final two episodes?
So, to repeat myself a little bit, I don't dislike the episodes inherently. I feel like if you had either something to ramp up to it, something to introduce you a little more gently, they would have been fine. You could have had them as is, just a little bit further along, and I think it would have been personally much more easy to accept and much more accepted as it is. So one of the feelings I felt going into, is it 25, the penultimate episode?
Yes.
It felt like I'd missed a few episodes. And to use the idea of the drawing of the horse before, it's not so much that the ending is the 5-year-old's attempt at a drawing. It feels like the artist has sketched out the rough shape. They've drawn like the circles of where the joints are and they've connected them, and then they've had to leave it there. There's no detail, there's no shading, there's no implication of there's fur on the horse. It's just the rough shape. Another metaphor that I used with you earlier was previously in other episodes for theory crafting, I've described it as cookie dough. This feels like they've dumped the ingredients in front of me and then pointed at a cookie and said, here you go, here's one I made earlier, have at. And I'm like, cool. I've been given flavoring, I've been given sugar, I've been given, all the base ingredients.
Flour, salt, cookie,
yeah,
chocolate chips.
Maybe a bit of cocoa powder, but yeah, anyway. And then it's like, cool, I've not been given a recipe, I've not been given instructions, I've just been given, here is the finished product. And again, with those raw ingredients, you could probably make a whole bunch of things.
Whole big mess.
And yeah, you can certainly end up with a very big mess as well. Nobody's telling you you're going to need to use that oven.
Yeah. Just stick it under your armpit and get it real warm. Yeah.
Yeah. Go for a marathon with it between your knees.
You'd look like you're doing 26 miles to a toilet. Shuffling along awkwardly.
Some people might describe that as...
I understand what you're saying. Do you feel that watching End of Evangelion would clear or muddy the waters? Or what are your hopes, maybe?
Okay, so because there is a continuation and I'm aware of the continuation, what would I want from that continuation to gap fill, basically?
Okay.
The bits that it's, as I said, if it was replace episodes 25 and 26, just take them, maybe as is, and put them to episodes 29 and 30.
Okay. And
fill in that previous bit, maybe do a little bit after. I know apparently it does a little bit after. It doesn't need it after. It's an ending. It does tie things up. Maybe not in the greatest way, but it does tie them up. Because, again, if you've turned humans into soup, into the Gestalt soup that is the
LCL.
HIP. Oh, okay, well,
that's what the fluid is supposedly called. The LCL entry plug.
But if you've turned, all humans into this one thing, then you can't, I think you struggle to go anywhere with that because everyone's dead, Jim.
Thanks, Star Trek.
Everyone's dead, Dave. They're all dead.
They're all one big entity of soup.
Yeah. And it becomes, well, how do you tell a story from a non-human perspective? So how would you take a Gestalt consciousness, something that is inherently almost unrecognizably human because it has multiple perspectives, it's a Gestalt consciousness. And how do you then be like, cool, here's a story from its perspective?
Which is how I feel this is meant to be is it's meant to be people who kind of know each other linking together to try and loop, and they all discover the common causality for their problems is an underlying feeling of loneliness, which is maybe the author's perspective. Is
which again,
I do these things because I'm alone, but if I do these things, it makes me meet people, and if I meet people, we can create things, and if we can create things, we can move forward together.
And I can see what it is. It's another point of dissonance for me, I'm afraid, in that I would have loved to see an idea of somebody who doesn't fit this in the story. So a lot of characters. So you've got I've said it before. This feels like parental issues, the anime, because Misato's got parental issues, Shinji's got parental issues, Asuka's got parental issues. Rei's a funny one because she both does and doesn't have parents, but she has issues.
Yeah.
I feel like Gendo, one of the points, and I'm not given timing, I don't want to labor the point, it feels like the reason Gendo's done this is because he's lonely, because he's missing Yui. Because it feels like once Yui died, he set on this course of action to fill the loneliness in his heart. Yes. Which is why I disagree with you, because you said this was his parental thing of giving Shinji a world. No, I disagree with it. I disagree. He's doing it for a selfish reason.
Okay.
That happens to benefit other people.
Okay.
He's not being altruistic. He's being selfish with the guise of altruism. But regardless, everybody's got this hole that they're trying to fill. And I would really have loved to see a character who doesn't, who might be content interacting with people, but is also content on their own.
Yes.
And so
we've only met one character that fulfills that requirement in the show, and he's dead.
Yeah. And funnily enough, he's not in the HIP. But I would have loved to have seen a character who maybe either interacts with internally or externally with the HIP that breaks that mold. But from an author's perspective, I don't think they'd want that. So I don't think we would have seen that.
No, I very much agree with everything that you just said there. And I'd not thought of the Gendo perspective that you just put forward, which I may need to chew on that a little bit. Just because... Sorry.
This bit may or may not remain in the episode, but this is why I don't believe he's in Shinji's world. I believe the two parents you see, the Yui and the Gendo you see, aren't them. You never see their faces. Yeah. They are his projection of them, and they're in their own world. Okay. Everyone has their own ideal world.
Yeah. Throughout the series, man makes his own paradise to feel safe.
But yeah, the idea of Gendo, it being a selfish reason, him being altruistic the entire time, does not feel like a Gendo thing. And I know that the idea, it's sometimes the greatest something require the most sacrifices. Maybe you know the quote.
All I can think of is God gives his toughest battles to his silliest soldiers, which is completely unrelated.
It's like the toughest choices require the hardest sacrifices, and I get that. If Gendo is trying to be altruistic, I could see it, but it feels much more in his character, the way that he has treated people as tooling, that he's doing it for a selfish reason to get basically back with Yui.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for the last 2 episodes of Neon Genesis Evangelion.
The original anime.
The Netflix original anime.
But I'm meaning like in terms of there is more content
of it. There is a lot more. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you later.